I mean, we've talked about it clinically, we've talked about it behaviorally, we've talked about it socially, we've added metrics, but let's push a little bit harder, because at some point there has to be healing if there's going to be progress. What does that healing for racism look like?
Education and conversation. So there are a lot of Caucasians right now that want to know the truth, that are looking and seeking for the truth. I would say to any of the people that are viewing this, one thing would be to open up and talk to them. I saw on Facebook and other things, a lot of people going, well, let them figure it out. Well, they should already know. And I'm going to say to you right now, they didn't know, and look where we are right now.
That's right.
Put up to them this far, and look what they've done. Start educating your white friends. Start helping them to see and empathize with what is the struggle, and help them see that it happened on their side. Because just as we were lied to and told that we were nothing, they were lied to and told they were supreme.
That's right.
That's
right. But they also have to be advocates for anti-racism. When Caucasians are in a group and someone's about to tell a stereotypical off-color joke, they have to stand up and stop it and say, no, that's not what we're doing. That's part of the education they're talking about, Shor. And they also have to think before they speak, because words hurt. For instance, a group of Caucasians talking, and they say, those people. We're not those people. Or they say, those brothers from the hood. That's not your language. Don't blaspheme against us with language, and other things that they've done that are not good for this G-rated talk. But they also have to walk a mile in our shoes, in terms of discrimination, and then consider how do they feel.
I think we need to walk in theirs too, though, a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of times we kind of self-focus on, all of this happened to me. And sometimes what I hear from some of my counterparts is they had a rough life too. They really don't see that privilege. And it's for us to be able to try to help them see how they had privilege even through their struggle. There's a lot of information out now. A lot of videos out now that are talking about that dynamic, and it says it in a way that's safe, that isn't intimidating, so that we can have real conversations. So I think in healing, Glenn, having those real conversations without being defensive is a start.
She's right. Let's get it all out. All the stuff you've ever thought, all the stuff your mother and father told you, your grandparents told you, you read in a book. All that stuff, throw it out on the table, and then we can all tear it up. Just tear it up, put it in the fire, and be done with it. Let's all, it's not going to happen overnight, not even in a decade, but just the healing, let the healing process begin. And you got to be genuine. And I look at the cities, the counties, the organizations, the governors, all saying, okay, we agree with Black Lives Matter. We're not going to stand for racism. That's fine to put it on paper, but what are you doing in action? Governor Cuomo, right after the Karen incident, the Cooper incident, he immediately signed that anybody who calls 911 with falsely, will be considered racial profiling. Okay, and that's great on paper. Now we have to make sure it works and that there are no loopholes in it. So all I'm saying is it's great that everyone agrees on paper. Now let's put some arms and legs and voices and action behind that.
Like, let's get to the action stage of change.
Yes.
We study Protraska and DiClemente stages of change, where the initial stage of change to any change behavior, be it addiction, mental health, or even this social issue that we're dealing with, you first reach your first pre-contemplation stage. You get into a stage of now contemplating that there actually is an issue. Your next stage is preparation. So these conversations are that preparation that are with state leaders and government leaders. And then we get into the stage of action. And action is where, you know, we're actually making changes. We're signing things. We're enforcing it. We're putting money behind our you know, whatever, our laws. And so, but once you reach action stage, there's maintenance. And a lot of times we drop the ball at the maintenance stage. You know, we've thrown together a lot of social programs, you know, in an active moment of protest. And then there was no maintenance for those programs. And some of those structures, you know, fell apart or were attacked by some of the other oppressive, you know, institutions that, you know, bleed into them. And so when that occurs, you're going to have a relapse. Relapse, again, a natural part of recovery. And so when we relapse, it's like, do we get back on the saddle? Do we get back on the wagon? Or do we fall off the wagon and stay there and just fight and fuss and, you know, everyone's tearing at one another rather than us coming up with solutions that benefit our communities?
And there are some well-meaning politicians who put out some legislature that, okay, you have to have a woman on your board for diversity. And it's being fought in the courts now because it does not help women if, in order for them to get on a board, a Fortune 500 board, there has to be affirmative action. Why can't she get on that board based upon her experience and her capability? Just yesterday, I'm reading in the paper that now they want corporations, Fortune 100 corporations, to have a number of Blacks on their board based upon how big their board is. So if you've got a 10-person board, then there should be 3 minority people. They didn't say Black, minority people on it, and so forth. That sort of kind of measurement. I think it hurts, in my estimation, I think it hurts more than helps. Unintentionally, you're setting Black people up to be on the board to be hated even more.
But we're hated every time we break through anything.
But if it becomes, my white company is forced to put you, a Black man, on the board, I am going to do all I can to make your life miserable so that I can say after 6 months or a year, see, Black folks, you can't have them on the board. They're just incompetent. Rather than, again, having a diversified board because that's what you want. That's the right thing to do. I just kind of disagree with trying to legislate who should be on the board of a Fortune 500 company.
I agree with people making those inroads into these larger institutions that have been traditionally exclusive to white men. I agree, making those, if that's what you want to do. And looking at the macro of it, from the history, I remember Malcolm X reaching out for racism and the civil rights to be a global thing back in the 60s for the world to pay attention to it. So I pray within Riverside County and all the other places that institutionally racism as a health crisis makes noise and it has a large impact. But it makes me just think about the micro implications of what we can do now. And one of those most powerful things for our mental health lately for me has been Black Twitter, just to be honest, because it creates value within Black community opposed to us always trying to get into what they got, us always holding what they have as the highest of value. Oh, I want to be in this company. I want to drive their car. I want it they. In Black Twitter, it celebrates, it honors, it connects us as Black people. And not just Black Twitter, there's other platforms, but on that micro level where we can be person to person and establish value within ourselves, within our natural hair, within our skin tone, within our beauty, our speech, our language. When we start to have value on the micro, hopefully it creates opportunities on the macro level. So us establishing more positions where our lens, the way we look at the world is healthy, is valuable, is as important or even more important than the majority because it is ours, is one of the most influential and powerful things that we can do for our mental health.
Right, comes from us.
But I am a little older, and I remember clearly the end of affirmative action. That was through President Ronald Reagan. So
That's right.
to Ronald Reagan, I was just starting my career as a professional in accounting, and I lived in San Diego. They had these huge they still have them, these huge skyscrapers downtown San Diego, right? The Cole Building housed probably 3,000 employees, right? You know, in each, there are several of these buildings down there. So I'm you know, going through a temp agency, and my name is Shor, right? So you don't know what I am. So I was going through temp agencies, and my resume would go up, and based on my qualifications, I fit the job. When I got there, they were stuck with me because of a discrimination act, so they had to keep me. But after Ronald Reagan, I would be in those buildings alone, 3,000 employees, and I'm the only Black. And the only reason I'm there is because they couldn't figure it out with my resume. So the reason I'm saying that is I think we need to get in. I agree with we need our own, totally. But I think we need to get in any way we can. They're going to be uncomfortable. We're going to be uncomfortable. But I think that integration is something that we need to continue. Sometimes, and I want to have a whole nother conversation, maybe next week we can talk about that, because right now we're seeing a big move for segregation, right? And I think that we should really start looking, maybe we should examine the value and you know, what we benefit from integration versus segregation, which was kind of what we were just talking about here. Great topic. But I still think that we should still be in mainstream. And we, as we're building, right?
I think so.
I agree. I just want to say really quick, I agree with integration as long as we don't lose our inherent value. If we have to give up our own value and our own systems and the ways of operating, that's not for me. Like, if you look at other cultures coming from different countries, they bring their culture with them. They bring values with them. If it's a space for us to do that, I'm all for it. But if we feel like we have to leave our who we are in a core level at the door, I get code switching. Everyone's on one language. I get a dress code. I get that. But if we feel like we got to just totally change who we are, be integrated into the system, I'm not for that.
Right. That's what made the 60s so dynamic, when our brothers, the 60s and 70s, when our brothers started wearing dashikis, when our women started wearing their hair natural. We had our own identity, just what you're saying, James. And people still went to work. They still taught school. They still raised families. But they had such great self-worth and value at that time. So, James, I totally agree with you on that.
I'd like to bring this to a head, because what we've talked about is, again, a lot of different components floating around the issue of the mental health crisis that's being created by racism. So what I'd like for us to do is reflect on one issue, and that one issue will involve a health issue that we have found that can be attributed to one's race. One health issue that we have found that can be attributed to one's race.
High blood pressure. A lot of people say, and it's been a thing, and I'm sure there may be some value, some truth to it, but it's not total, is that Blacks have high blood pressure because we eat pork. It's not the truth. We have high blood pressure because of all of the microaggressions that we deal with on a daily basis, and how we have to deal with that and support and protect our family. So mine would be high blood pressure.
I'm sure Farrakhan would also disagree with that.
I know.
All right. Generalized anxiety disorder, the increased anxiety around the microaggressions, even the major and overt aggressions, the aggressions, the anxiety that is just caused by being Black.
Wow. Tamika, you'd be next.
So I'm going to throw out a good old theory of mine, which is what is commonly called bipolar disorder, which often is masked dual consciousness, and the conflict that goes on between the mania of trying to work so hard to be the best, to be the good old boy, to be the accepted guy, or to overturn racism, and all of that brain and mental and physical activity that goes into that, and then falling into the depression of it not quite working, of you being hated by your own, or divisive strategies that occur. And so these phases in an activist cycle, and a lot of times with Black men, I see it a lot. I see a heavy diagnosis of bipolar between the ages of 21 and 24 for Black men, which is a lot of times when they come into consciousness, when they cross over from their white dominant thinking into learning about Garvey or other types of things and some of the truths of this nation. I see that activity, I see that mania, and I see that depression. And so if I were to say something that were caused by racism, I would say that what people are sometimes calling bipolar disorder is maybe a different conflict that is going on for African Americans.
I call it angry Black man disorder.
Angry Black man disorder, yeah.
There was a study done while I was in school, and they were saying that, you know, Black men are not really home with the families, right? They're in prison. And they actually tried to make a medical diagnosis of men, Black men, of why, instead of wanting to be home with their families, they were doing things to get arrested. Can you believe that? Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
I was so angry. I wrote a whole paper on it.
It's a phenomena. I wouldn't call it there's something to it, but I don't know that I want to classify it as a
Joyce.
Separation anxiety?
Tamika really explained in clinical terms, trauma-informed terms, bipolar. I was simply going to say, because I didn't know how to word it, but she did. I was going to say depression based on self-hate. That's a health issue for so many of our Black young people, so many. And it just manifests itself in such sometimes destructive ways. Old people too, older Blacks too, who have just suffered for so long. They know they're good at being a mechanic. They know they're good at, I don't know, designing things. And there's no place to put this, no place to put their gifts, their talents. So depression sets in. They hate themselves. They hate the fact that they're Black. And that's an illness.
I tell you, with regards to what we're enduring from an African American perspective, and then the insight we're able to bring from this panel, we clearly could continue on and on. But with that being said, I want to thank Shor, Denny, James Woods, Tamika Carter, Joyce Clarke, for the incredible insight that they brought to a very serious problem. And it's not going away soon, unfortunately, that the mental health crisis that is associated with racism is going to be pervasive because the images are going to continue to be in front of us, whether it's through media, whether it's through day-to-day interactivity, whether it's through some of the hard times that are ahead for us as a country from a social economic standpoint. The issue's not going to go away. But what's fortunate is here with TIPS IE, we'll be able to continue to address this on a regular basis because it is so important for the progress of our young people and having the tools to manage that as they progress. So again, on behalf of TIPS IE, Trauma Informed Preventive Services of the Inland Empire, I thank you for your attention. And in ending, I want to wish everyone be safe. Thank you.
Joyce?
Thank you.
Oh, my turn, okay.
Absolutely.
If you would love to hear your comments, your questions, your insight, connect with us by phone 951-282-7173 or via email tips, TIPS, .inlandempire, cal, C-A-L, @gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.